Welcome to Nemex Movie. Today, I'm going to explain an action sci-fi movie called Doomsday. So let's get started. The movie opens in 2008, when a deadly virus called Reaper is discovered and accidentally released in Scotland. The virus has already infected thousands of people, causing symptoms such as hysteria, homicidal impulses, boils, and ulcers. Currently, soldiers dressed in hazmat suits are shown blocking all routes from Scotland to the south of the island. They fire into a crowd of refugees, both infected and uninfected, who are desperately trying to flee. In response, the enraged crowd also turns on the soldiers and attacks them. Among the refugees, we see a mother holding her young daughter, Eden Sinclair. The two desperately attempt to flee, but a stray bullet strikes the girl, removing one of her eyes. Despite this, the mother somehow manages to get her daughter on the last helicopter bound for central England. Before they part ways, she gives Eden a letter so that she can remember her. However, shortly after Eden departs, her mother is eventually killed by the crowd. To keep the infected separate from the rest of the world, the British government eventually builds a 30-foot high concrete wall to isolate Scotland. Several guards are stationed along the wall to shoot anyone who approaches, and minefields are laid near the border. The quarantine is effective, but its extreme methods sever diplomatic and economic ties between the United Kingdom and the rest of the world. This makes the UK an outcast, resulting in a future marked by unemployment, unrest, and growing inequality. The scene then cuts to the year 2035, where we meet an adult Eden. She now works in the Special Forces of the Department of Internal Security under Captain Nelson. She has replaced the eye she lost as a child with an advanced electronic prosthesis. This prosthesis has a built-in camera that can record everything and send data directly to a wrist device. One day, a police raid on a slum uncovers a room full of people infected by the Reaper virus, both alive and dead. This means that the virus has resurfaced 27 years after its first outbreak in Scotland. In response, senior officials gather for a private meeting led by Prime Minister John Hatcher. However, it is clear that despite Hatcher's position, he is manipulated like a puppet by a corrupt politician, Michael Canaris. The cabinet, including Captain Nelson, discusses the virus looming threat and how to keep it from spreading. After much deliberation, they decide to close all bridges leading out of the city and also isolate government buildings. However, after the meeting, Hatcher and Canaris meet privately with Nelson and show him satellite photos of Glasgow from 3 years prior. The images show people moving around the dead city, implying that a cure for the virus was discovered after all. They then discuss Dr. Kane, a scientist who had been working on the vaccine in central Glasgow before the quarantine. They assume that he must have been successful in creating the cure. Therefore, Canaris orders Nelson to send a team to Scotland to locate Dr. Kane and bring the cure. Following this, Nelson selects Eden to lead the team that will be sent to Scotland. She readily agrees, because it is a perfect chance for her to find her mother. Before leaving for Scotland, Eden is met by Canaris, who orders her to return within 48 hours. He then makes it clear that if she cannot find the cure, she should not bother returning at all. Canaris also gives her information about Dr. Kane, instructing her to go to his lab first and then follow the trail from there. In the next scene, Eden boards a helicopter and soon arrives at the Scottish border wall. There, she meets her new subordinates, Sergeant Norton, Corporals Chandler, Reed, Carpenter, and Miller. There are also 2 military doctors, Talbot and Sterling, who once worked at the Reaper Virus Research Center, or Reaper for short. The military opens the gates that were welded shut in 2008, and the expedition enters the quarantine zone in 2 armored vehicles. While they're traveling, Eden listens to a recording of the last radio messages from Dr. Kane, who, along with the soldiers, defended the hospital. Through the recording, she learns of the mass deaths, the horrors of violence, and the cannibalism that ravaged Glasgow. Soon enough, they arrive at the hospital where Dr. Kane used to work, but it turns out that it has long been abandoned. Not long after, a frail woman suddenly appears outside in front of the building. Eden quickly orders her team not to approach her, but Chandler believes she needs help. Disregarding Eden's orders, he rushes towards the woman and tries to help her. She soon collapses in his arms, and Chandler is left with no choice but to carry her into their vehicle. At this moment, Eden and her team are suddenly ambushed by a group of savages wielding knives and clubs. These people are covered in colorful paint and tattoos, looking like punk rockers. Eden's team fights back fiercely and defeats many of the attackers, but Carpenter and Miller are killed in the process. Soon after, the savages begin throwing Molotov cocktails at the armored vehicle. Eden quickly orders the vehicles to be moved to the rear exit so Chandler and Reed follow her command. Unfortunately, the girl Chandler had helped suddenly awakens and slashes his throat. He crashes into the building, but before dying, blows up the vehicle and his attacker with a grenade. Meanwhile, Reed drives the second vehicle and picks up Eden, Norton, and both doctors, but one of the attackers successfully smashes the windshield with an axe. Another attacker fires a crossbow shot, which immediately kills Reed. This causes the vehicle to collide with a pile of wrecked cars and flip over. The survivors then scramble out of the car and do everything they can to defend themselves. During the chaos, Norton and Sterling manage to flee, but Eden and Talbot, who are wounded in the leg, are apprehended by the savages and knocked unconscious. Sometime later, Eden awakens in captivity, surrounded by savages. She is then confronted by the group's leader, Soul, who appears to be an insane sadist. He violently beats her and demands to know who she is and where she comes from. Eventually, Eden reveals that she comes from beyond the wall, which brings a twisted smile to Soul's face. "I knew the wildlings existed." He gleefully says how Cain has been lying to them, claiming there's nothing on the other side. Upon hearing this, Eden asks if Cain is still alive and says she wants to meet him. However, Soul responds that the old man is useless and reveals his plan to use Eden to help them cross the wall. Next, Soul orders his guard to keep a close eye on Eden, insisting that she must remain alive. Before leaving, Soul's girlfriend, Viper, shows Eden her GPS locator, drops it to the floor, and smashes it under her boot. Soul then arrives at a sacrifice ceremony, where he gathers his punk followers and gives a speech about how Cain has been lying to them. He promises they will finally be able to leave this place, and the crowd rejoices. After that, Soul announces to his followers that dinner is about to be served. Shockingly, the dinner turns out to be Talbot, who is roasted alive on a massive grill. After the man finally passes, the savages cut him into pieces and proceed to eat. In the meantime, Eden uses a wire from her broken GPS to unlock her handcuffs. She then grabs the guard outside and forces him to open the cell door. The terrified man obliges and unlocks the door, after which Eden immediately kills him. She begins to leave, but another prisoner named Callie speaks to her and asks if she can release her as well. Eden refuses to get involved, but Callie explains that she is Cain's daughter and can take her to him. This finally convinces Eden, but all of a sudden Viper shows up. The two women then get into an intense sword fight, but in the end, Eden gains the upper hand and decapitates Viper. Following this, she releases Callie, and the two make a run for it. They meet Callie's friend Joshua along the way, who agrees to help them escape. Eden then contacts Norton and Sterling via radio, instructing them to meet at the train station. The two immediately head to the location, but are spotted by some savages on the way. Despite the danger, they sprint with all their might as the attackers pursue them on a motorcycle. Eden also rushes to help her companions and kills one of the savages with an axe. In the end, she and her team manage to board the train just in time, narrowly escaping their pursuers. After a while, Callie reveals that Soul is actually her brother and Cain's son, but her father and son are at a brutal war right now. Callie also states that while she will tell Eden her father's location, she has no plans to go there herself. She describes her father as a psychopath who enjoys torturing and killing anyone who opposes him. Shortly after, the train takes them to a remote mountain area. The group then passes through an old bomb shelter, which was originally built to protect against nuclear war and is stocked with all the necessary supplies. However, shortly after leaving the shelter, they hear thundering horse hooves, and several mounted horsemen arrive wielding bows and spears. They turn out to be Cain's executioners, led by a dangerous and intimidating man named Telamon. The group tries to flee, but Joshua is tragically struck and killed by a spear while the rest are apprehended. Following this, they are taken to an old medieval castle, where Cain rules after declaring himself King of Scotland. Eden finally gets to meet him, but she quickly realizes that he is not who she expected. Cain reveals that he chose this location because he knew they would be watching over the cities. He believes that this primitive, closed society is the most reliable, and that it will survive regardless of whether life exists beyond the wall. When Eden reveals that the Reaper virus has returned and she has come to seek a vaccine, Cain dismissively informs her that there is none. It turns out that the few Scots who have survived here have simply developed immunity to the virus. To maintain his power, Cain orders the execution of Eden and her companions. The psychopath doesn't even spare his daughter, and orders her to be branded with a hot iron to cleanse her of any infections. She has cooties. After this, Eden is forced into battle with Telamon in the arena. Meanwhile, Norton and Sterling overpower their guards and confine them to their cells. They then release Callie and break into the ammo vault, taking grenades and other weapons. Back in the arena, Eden continues her intense fight with Telamon. She eventually manages to pierce his helmet with a chisel and kills him. This enrages Cain, who orders the execution of the prisoners. But before they can act, Norton blows up several sections of the castle with grenades. Amidst the chaos, Eden and her companions fight their way out. They manage to escape on horses, but Cain also sends a pursuit after them. Next, our heroes hide in the bomb shelter, surrounded by a variety of useful items, such as a luxury Bentley and a radio telephone. But before they can depart, Cain's men arrive and launch an attack. They immediately shoot Norton with a bow and tragically kill him. Eden is devastated by the loss of her friend, but there is no time to grieve. The remaining three quickly climb into the Bentley and drive away to the city. On the way, Eden contacts Canaris by phone, informing him that the task is complete and asks him to come near the quarantine wall. The latter is thrilled by the news and immediately departs in a helicopter to meet them. However, the danger is far from over, as Eden's group is met on the highway by several cars and a bus, led by a group of cannibals. Sol, who is consumed with anger by the death of his girlfriend, commands the attack. During the frantic chase, many of the savages' cars collide, leading to all of their deaths. A desperate Sol then leaps onto the roof of the Bentley and even manages to crawl inside for a moment, but Eden pushes him back out and accelerates the vehicle. The savages then start throwing blade saws at the Bentley, but one accidentally hits their own boss in the neck. As Sol clings to the roof, Eden plows the car directly into the bus that the savages used as a roadblock. This causes the bus to explode and ultimately decapitates Sol, just like his girlfriend. After the chaos subsides, a helicopter lands in front of them, from which Canaris emerges. He demands the cure for the virus, and Eden hands over Callie to him. She explains that because the girl has developed immunity, getting the vaccine from her blood will be easy. Hearing this, a pleased Canaris reveals that he doesn't intend to use the vaccine right away. Instead, he wants to wait until the pandemic consumes the entire world. As the sole owner of the vaccine, he plans to become a hero and seize control of the planet. Canaris then asks Eden to come with him, but she refuses and gets back into the car. Instead of returning to London with the others, Eden travels to Glasgow to find her mother, but she is devastated to learn that Mom has already passed away. As Eden looks at her pictures while crying, Nelson visits her. The two talk for a while before Eden hands him a recording of her conversation with Canaris, which she captured with her cybernetic eye. Upon returning to London, Nelson delivers the tape to the news channels. This exposes Canaris's treachery to the world, which eventually leads to his doom. In the final scene, Eden returns to the savages' base and shows them the decapitated body of Sol. However, instead of getting upset, they all start cheering and welcome her as their new leader. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.